There is a kind of strength that does not raise its voice. There is a kind of dignity that does not need to explain itself. In a world that constantly demands reactions, defenses, clarifications, and noise, silence becomes an act of worship when it is rooted in trust in Allah. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of weakness, but the silence of yaqeen, deep certainty that Allah sees, Allah knows, and Allah handles what no human ever could. You will not always be understood. Your intentions will be questioned. Your silence may be misinterpreted as defeat. But Allah never misreads a heart. He never confuses patience for powerlessness. He never overlooks a tear that falls in sujood or a prayer whispered when no one else is listening. When you remain silent for His sake, you are not ignoring injustice. You are placing it in the hands of the most just. There is a moment when responding feels urgent, when your nafs demands that you correct the narrative, defend your name, or expose the wrong that was done to you. But ask yourself, how many times has Allah defended you without announcing it? How many times did He block harm you never even saw? Silence is not surrender when Allah is your advocate. Silence is a declaration that you trust His timing more than your emotions. The Quran reminds us that Allah is Al-Basir, the all-seeing. Nothing escapes Him. Not the words spoken behind closed doors. Not the intentions hidden behind polite smiles. Not the injustice wrapped in false righteousness. When you stay silent and restrain your tongue, you are choosing discipline over impulse, faith over ego, and that choice is heavy with reward. The tongue can ignite fires that take years to put out. One sentence spoken in anger can damage relationships, reputations, even hearts. Silence, on the other hand, allows clarity to descend. It gives space for Allah to intervene in ways that are far more precise than our reactions ever could be. Sometimes Allah delays His response, not because He is unaware, but because He is preparing something greater than your immediate relief. Patience does not mean you are unaffected. It means you are anchored. You feel the pain, but you refuse to let it drag you away from Allah. You cry, but you do not complain to creation about what should be taken to the Creator. You restrain yourself, not because it is easy, but because you know that every ounce of Sabr is being counted. There is a special honor in being silent when you could speak, in walking away when you could argue, in trusting Allah when you could take control. This is the silence of those who know their Lord. This is the quiet confidence of someone who believes that Allah's plan never requires panic. When you leave a matter with Allah, you are not abandoning it. You are elevating it. You are saying, "Why Allah? This is beyond my strength, but never beyond yours." And Allah loves when His servant turns to Him with that kind of surrender. He loves when you choose dua over debate, tawakkul over tension, prayer over proof. People may move on, forget, distort, or deny. Allah records everything. He does not need witnesses. He does not need reminders. He does not forget who was sincere and who was false. And when He responds, because He always does, it will be with wisdom that leaves no doubt that silence was never loss. So guard your tongue, protect your heart, Do not rush Allah with your pain. Let Him work in the unseen, while you work on your closeness to Him. The moment you decide to stay silent for His sake, you shift the entire weight of the situation onto the One who carries the heavens without effort. And when Allah handles it, it will be handled in a way that brings justice without bitterness, relief without regret, and peace without explanation. Silence rooted in trust is often misunderstood because the world equates strength with noise. We are taught that power is proven by speaking louder, responding faster, and defending ourselves immediately. But faith teaches a different kind of strength, one that is quieter and far more difficult. When silence is chosen out of trust in Allah, it is not retreat, it is restraint. It is the ability to pause the tongue while the heart remains firmly connected to the Creator. This silence does not come from fear of people, but from confidence in Allah's control over every outcome. True trust means believing that Allah is actively managing what you cannot fix. It means knowing that your reputation, your pain, your dignity, and your future are safer in His hands than in your arguments. When someone wrongs you, and you resist the urge to react, you are making a profound statement of faith that Allah's justice is more complete than your explanation, and His timing more precise than your urgency. This kind of silence requires courage, because it asks you to sit with discomfort instead of releasing it through words. The ego wants to be heard immediately. It wants validation, sympathy, and victory. Trust asks the ego to step aside. It reminds you that not every battle is yours to fight, and not every misunderstanding needs your correction. When you stay silent for Allah's sake, you are declaring that your worth is not dependent on public opinion. You no longer chase clarity from people when you already have certainty from Allah. There is also a deep awareness behind this silence, the understanding that words cannot be taken back. Once spoken, they live on in hearts, memories, and consequences. Silence, however, keeps doors open. It prevents regret. It protects you from becoming someone you do not recognize just because you were provoked. Trusting Allah enough to remain silent is choosing long-term peace over short-term relief. This silence does not mean you deny injustice or suppress emotion. It means you redirect it. Instead of pouring your pain into conversations that may inflame it further, you carry it to sujood. Instead of explaining yourself to those who may never listen, you speak to the One who always hears. This redirection is where the power lies. The heart that trusts Allah is never passive. It is actively turning toward Him again and again. History and experience show that Allah's interventions are often quiet but decisive. Situations unravel on their own. Truth surfaces without effort. Doors close for those who caused harm, and open for those who remained patient. When you look back, you realize that silence was not emptiness. It was space for Allah to act. What felt like delay was actually protection. What felt like loss was preparation. Trust-based silence also refines the soul. It trains you to respond rather than react, to measure your words, and to understand that not everything deserves your energy. Over time, this discipline brings inner strength. You become less shaken by people's opinions and more anchored in Allah's presence. You stop needing to prove yourself because you know who you are before Him. This is why silence rooted in trust is one of the highest forms of strength. It requires self-control, humility, patience, and unwavering belief that Allah is enough. It is not the silence of defeat, but the silence of someone who knows that the one managing their affairs never loses, never forgets, and never fails. Believing that Allah sees and knows everything changes the way a believer responds to harm, injustice, and misunderstanding. When this certainty settles in the heart, it becomes easier to remain silent, not because the pain is small, but because Allah is greater. Nothing escapes His sight, not a careless word, not a hidden intention, not a wrong done in secret. Every glance, every whisper, every plan formed in darkness is fully known to Him. And this knowledge brings deep reassurance to the heart that feels wronged. Human beings are limited. They see fragments of the story and judge based on appearances. They may believe lies, overlook truth, or side with the louder voice. Allah, however, sees the full picture at once. He knows what was said publicly and what was meant privately. He knows what you intended, even when your actions were misunderstood. When you hold on to this truth, you no longer feel the desperate need to explain yourself to everyone. You realize that the one whose opinion matters most already knows. Silence becomes easier when you understand that Allah is not just aware, but also just. His justice is not delayed because of negligence, but because of wisdom. Sometimes He allows situations to unfold so that truth becomes undeniable, not just known. When you rush to defend yourself, you may interrupt a process that Allah is allowing to expose reality on its own. Remaining silent in such moments is an act of trust that Allah's justice will arrive in the best form and at the best time. There is also comfort in knowing that Allah does not require evidence from you. You do not need to collect proofs, convince people, or replay events in your mind endlessly. Allah already knows what happened exactly as it happened. This frees the heart from exhaustion. Instead of reliving the pain through constant explanation, you can place it with Allah and allow yourself to breathe. Silence becomes a refuge rather than a burden. When someone wrongs you and you stay silent, Allah takes over the defense. This does not mean you approve of the wrongdoing. It means you refuse to let it corrupt your character. You protect your tongue because you know Allah is Al-Basir and Al-Adl, the one who sees and the one who is perfectly just. Your restraint becomes a form of worship, and your silence becomes a testimony of faith. Often, Allah defends His servants in ways they never expect. People begin to see inconsistencies on their own. Situations shift. Truth emerges without confrontation. What you feared would damage you ends up refining you. And when Allah lifts the veil, it happens without you having to say a word. This is the quiet victory of those who trust His sight over their own strategy. This belief also heals the heart from bitterness. When you know Allah sees, you do not carry the burden of revenge. You are not consumed by thoughts of proving yourself or exposing others. You leave that weight with Allah and in return, He gives you peace. The heart becomes lighter because it is no longer holding what Allah has already taken responsibility for. Silence in this state is not emptiness, it is awareness. It is the constant remembrance that Allah is watching over you with perfect knowledge and care. Every moment of patience is recorded. Every tear is seen. Every injustice is counted. And with that certainty, the heart learns to be still, trusting that no truth placed with Allah is ever lost. The tongue is one of the most powerful and dangerous tools Allah has given the human being. With a few words, hearts can be healed or shattered, relationships can be built or destroyed, and paths can be opened or permanently closed. When emotions rise, the tongue becomes impatient, eager to release what the heart is carrying. But restraining it is an act of wisdom and faith. Because not every truth needs to be spoken in the heat of the moment, and not every feeling deserves a voice. Anger gives words a force that often outlives the emotion itself. A sentence spoken in frustration may take seconds to say, but its consequences can linger for years. Even when words are technically true, timing and tone can turn them into weapons. Silence, in contrast, creates a pause between feeling and action. That pause protects you. It gives the heart time to settle and allows the mind to regain clarity. Many regrets in life are not about what was done, but about what was said when restraint was abandoned. When you hold back your tongue for the sake of Allah, you are choosing character over impulse. You are acknowledging that your dignity is worth more than winning an argument. This choice preserves the heart from becoming hardened by resentment and guilt. Words spoken in anger often return to wound the speaker, bringing shame, broken trust, and self-blame. Silence shields you from that cycle. It keeps your inner world intact, even when the outer world is chaotic. There is also a spiritual dimension to this restraint. Every word is recorded, and every intention behind it is known. When you refrain from speaking harmful words, even though you are capable of them, you are rewarded for the struggle itself. This struggle refines the soul. It teaches patience, self-control, and humility. Over time, the heart learns that not reacting is sometimes the strongest response. Silence also prevents escalation. Many conflicts grow not because of the original issue, but because of the words exchanged afterward. One harsh statement invites another, and soon the matter becomes far larger than it ever needed to be. By staying silent, you stop the fire from spreading. You protect relationships, reputations, and your own peace. What could have turned into lasting damage remains contained because you chose restraint. This does not mean suppressing truth forever or accepting decree. It means understanding the difference between wisdom and reaction. Silence gives you time to choose the right moment, the right words, or sometimes to realize that no words are needed at all. It allows Allah to place calm in your heart, so that when you do speak, if you ever need to, your words are guided rather than driven by emotion. Restraint of the tongue is also mercy toward yourself. It spares you from replaying conversations in your mind, wishing you had spoken differently. It frees you from the burden of repairing what was damaged by careless speech. The peace that comes from knowing you did not cross a line is a quiet but powerful gift. In choosing silence, you are not silencing your pain. You are protecting it. You are keeping it safe from being mishandled by moments of anger. And in that protection, the heart finds relief, the soul finds growth, and the believer finds reward. Patience is often misunderstood as emotional numbness or passive endurance, but true patience is deeply felt. It is not the absence of pain, it is the decision to carry pain with purpose. When hardship strikes, the heart naturally aches, the mind searches for answers, and the soul feels heavy. Patience does not deny these realities. Instead, it teaches the believer how to move through them without losing connection to Allah or surrendering to despair. Choosing patience means acknowledging the pain while refusing to let it dictate your actions. The tears still fall, the questions still arise, and the heart still feels the weight of what has happened. But instead of letting these emotions push you toward complaint or resentment, patience redirects them toward Allah. The believer learns to whisper what hurts in dua rather than announce it to the world in frustration. This redirection is what preserves dignity and strengthens faith. There is a difference between seeking support and constantly complaining. Patience teaches balance. It allows the heart to release pain in a way that brings healing rather than exhaustion. When complaints are poured endlessly into conversations, they often deepen the wound. The story is repeated. The emotions are stirred again, and the heart remains trapped in the moment of hurt. Turning instead to Allah allows the heart to be heard without being exposed. He listens without judgment, without tiring, and without misunderstanding. Patience anchors the believer in meaning. Without it, suffering feels random and unbearable. With patience, suffering becomes a test with purpose, a moment that carries reward. Every restrained reaction, every suppressed word, every tear wiped away with remembrance becomes an act of worship. The believer begins to understand that patience is not about waiting for pain to disappear, but about trusting that Allah is shaping the soul through it. This kind of patience requires inner strength. It is far easier to vent, blame, or lash out than it is to remain composed. Yet the heart that chooses patience is training itself to rely on Allah rather than emotional release. Over time, this reliance builds resilience. The believer becomes less reactive, more reflective, and more spiritually grounded. Difficulties no longer shake faith as easily, because patience has taught the heart where to turn. Patience also protects relationships. When emotions run high, words spoken in pain can harm those who never intended to cause it. By holding back and choosing patience, the believer prevents unnecessary damage. Silence in these moments is not coldness, it is care. It is choosing not to spread pain beyond where it already exists. In doing so, the heart remains soft rather than hardened. There is a quiet companionship in patience. When you sit with your pain and turn to Allah, you are never alone. Allah draws near to those who endure with faith. He replaces restlessness with calm, confusion with clarity, and heaviness with hope. Even when answers do not come immediately, the heart feels supported because it knows it is seen and valued. Patience does not erase hardship, but it transforms it. It turns moments of weakness into sources of strength and moments of sorrow into steps toward closeness with Allah. By choosing patience, the believer remains anchored, not because the storm has passed, but because the heart has found its anchor in Allah. Leaving a matter with Allah is one of the most liberating decisions a believer can make. It does not mean ignoring reality or pretending the situation does not exist. It means recognizing the limits of human strength and choosing to place what overwhelms you into the care of the One whose power has no limits. When you try to carry everything on your own, the heart becomes restless and heavy. When you hand it over to Allah, the weight shifts and the soul begins to breathe again. Human effort has boundaries. You can think, plan, speak, and act, yet outcomes remain uncertain. Control is an illusion that exhausts the heart. Trusting Allah breaks this illusion gently but firmly. It reminds you that you were never meant to manage every detail of your life alone. When you leave a matter with Allah, you are not giving up. You are stepping into a higher level of trust. You are acknowledging that Allah's wisdom reaches where your understanding cannot. This act of surrender elevates the situation itself. What was once confined to human limitations is now placed under divine care. Your problem is no longer restricted by resources, timing, or people's intentions. It is now connected to Allah's knowledge, mercy, and power. This shift changes how you carry the burden. Even before circumstances change, the heart feels lighter, because it knows it is no longer responsible for the outcome. Leaving a matter with Allah also refines intention. You stop acting out of desperation and begin acting out of faith. Instead of forcing solutions, you focus on obedience, patience, and prayer. Your role becomes clear. Do what is within your capacity with sincerity, and trust Allah with what lies beyond it. This clarity brings peace because the heart is no longer pulled in conflicting directions. Often, Allah works in ways that remain unseen for a time. When you leave a matter with Him, you give Him the space to act without interference from panic or haste. Situations align quietly. Barriers dissolve unexpectedly. Help arrives from places you never anticipated. Looking back, you realize that had you insisted on your own control, you might have blocked the very ease Allah was preparing. This surrender also protects the heart from bitterness and resentment. When you stop trying to manage people's actions and reactions, you free yourself from constant disappointment. You accept that guidance, change, and justice ultimately belong to Allah. This acceptance does not make you indifferent. It makes you balanced. You care deeply, but you are not consumed. There is strength in knowing when to step back. Leaving a matter with Allah requires humility, because it asks you to admit that your power is limited. Yet this humility is not weakness. It is alignment with truth. The heart finds rest when it stops pretending to be in control and allows Allah to take over. As this trust deepens, anxiety loosens its grip. The mind becomes quieter, the heart becomes steadier, even if the outcome takes time. the believer walks forward with calm confidence, knowing that nothing placed with Allah is ever neglected. What you leave with Him is never lost, never forgotten, and never mishandled. When Allah responds, His justice arrives with a depth and balance that human reactions can never achieve. People often seek immediate resolution because pain demands relief, but Allah's response is never rushed or careless. It comes at the moment when it will bring the most clarity, the most healing, and the least harm. This is why trusting Allah's response requires faith beyond what is visible, because His wisdom operates beyond the limits of emotion and impatience. Human justice is often tangled with ego. Even when we are right, our responses can carry bitterness, anger, or the desire to prove ourselves. These emotions may offer temporary satisfaction, but they leave scars on the heart. Allah's justice, however, arrives without bitterness. It does not need raised voices or dramatic confrontations. When Allah settles a matter, the heart feels relief rather than regret. There is peace in knowing that the outcome was guided by divine wisdom rather than personal reaction. One of the most beautiful aspects of Allah's response is clarity. Confusion fades. Truth becomes evident. What once felt overwhelming begins to make sense. Situations that seemed unfair are revealed in a new light, either through visible changes or through inner understanding. Allah may clear your name, soften hearts, close harmful doors, or open paths you never imagined. His justice is not limited to punishment or reward. It includes guidance, correction, and mercy. When Allah handles a matter, resolution comes without the heaviness of revenge. The heart is not burdened with guilt or lingering anger. Instead, there is a quiet acceptance that everything unfolded as it was meant to. Even when accountability is established, it happens in a way that preserves the believer's dignity. You do not have to look back and wish you had acted differently, because your restraint protected you from crossing lines that could have haunted you later. Allah's response also brings growth. Through the waiting, the believer learns patience, trust, and humility. These qualities remain long after the situation itself has passed. What once felt like a test becomes a source of strength. The heart becomes more resilient, more aware, and more anchored in faith. This internal transformation is often the greatest part of Allah's justice, even though it is less visible than external change. There is also mercy in the way Allah resolves matters. He does not only deal with the wrong that was done, He tends to the heart that was hurt. He replaces anxiety with calm, bitterness with forgiveness, and fear with reassurance. Even if the outcome is not exactly as imagined, the peace that settles in the heart makes it easier to accept. This peace is a sign that Allah has handled the matter in the best possible way. Ultimately, when Allah responds, the believer realizes that silence and patience were never losses. They were investments. Every moment of restraint, every unanswered insult, every tear held back was leading to a resolution that carried peace rather than pain. Allah's justice does not just close the chapter, it heals the heart that lived through it.